When was the last time you held a musical instrument? Some might say recently, but I'd bet for most of us it has been quite a while. Now, did you know that there are adult-friendly instrument petting zoos? Welcome to the Just Dumb Enough podcast, a show that acknowledges no one is always an expert by dispelling misconceptions with real experts. I'm your host as always, Colton Petrie. My guest today is Vincent James. Vincent is co-founder of Keep Music Alive, an international non-profit focused on music education and advocacy. They partner with over 1,200 music schools and stores to provide free lessons multiple times per year, and are backed by such famous artists as Jack Black, Julie Andrews, Vanessa Williams, Richie Sambora, Kenny Loggins, and many more. The closest of these events is Kids Music Day, happening between September 29th and October 8th of this year, which is next week and the week after if you're listening to this live. Also, it kinda snuck up on me that the show is turning 2 years old next week. That's really hard for me to imagine because time has seemed to just fly by. There's so much I've done with the show and still so much more that I want to do. But I figure we'll make next week a special guest-free episode like I did with the 1-year episode. Feel free to send your thoughts, questions, or feelings to dumbenoughpodcast@gmail.com and maybe I'll be reading them on air as we celebrate. But for now, let's save music. Welcome to the show, Vincent James.
Hey, Colton, thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, I'm so glad to have you on. Why don't you introduce yourself for the audience?
So, I'm Vincent James, along with my wife Joanne. We are co-founders of Keep Music Alive, which is a music education advocacy nonprofit, national. And some of our major programs include Teach Music Week in March, Kids Music Day in October, and year-round we do what we call musical instrument petting zoos. And for Teach Music Week and Kids Music Day, we partner now with over 1,200 music schools, stores, and organizations to offer free lessons to new students, kids, and adults, and host special events that benefit and celebrate kids playing music. And then for the instrument petting zoos, which is probably the most fun thing we do personally, because it's kind of our hands-on activity here in the Philadelphia area, we bring guitars, ukuleles, keyboards, and dozens of different types of percussion instruments for kids to interact with. Colton, it's like a please touch museum for musical instruments. And we get so inspired watching the kids get inspired, getting excited about wanting to play an instrument.
Yeah, that's certainly unique. I've never heard of an instrument petting zoo to just be like, yeah, come pick something up and see if you can play it.
Yes, come give it a try. So many times parents, come bring their kids somewhere and they're like, don't touch anything, don't touch anything. And we're like, you can play and touch here, anything you like here. We do have our teaching artists. We'll show them how to hold the instrument, how to make their first musical sound. And we're just trying to inspire them to want to start playing music. We're not actually teaching. Usually there's too much musical noise going around to really, have a focused teaching lesson. But, sometimes we'll show a simple chord, basically we're demonstrating, having them showing them how to make the sound. And they often get really, really excited. Their eyes get real big, huge smiles. We'll sometimes get lines line at some of the different instruments, kids trying to I want to do that next. I want to do that next. And it's just a whole lot of fun for everyone.
Yeah, just kind of pick something up and see if it fits you or if it drives you want to learn.
Yes, yes, yes. And the parents and grandparents and whoever's, bringing the child, the guardians that are bringing the children, they get excited as well because they're either like remembering, when, they used to play maybe, or they wish they had played, or they're thinking about going back and starting to play again. It kind of brings us all back to our childhood. Oh, I remember that instrument in elementary school. Oh, I saw that before. And then sometimes we'll get a parent sit down with a guitar, say, and they'll start, wailing on like a Led Zeppelin or Jimi Hendrix riff. Like, oh, you can really play. You you sit there for a little while and play. Will inspire even more kids hearing you play.
So what got you started doing all this?
It's funny. I'm a lifetime songwriter and musician. And throughout my adult life, I've been everything from actually starting from my teenage years. I played in bands, written songs. I managed bands. I worked in a recording studio. I co-owned a studio for a little while. I promoted concerts. I wrote custom songs for people through my lovesongs.com website for weddings and anniversaries, trying all these different things and never really kind of had something stick with me strong enough in my heart. Like this is really what I was meant to do. And then one day I was on listening to a call. It was like a teleseminar back before the internet was really a thing about how, at least as popular as it is now, about how everybody has a book inside them that we need to write. And honestly, Colton, I never thought I would write a book about anything. I didn't consider myself an expert at anything. By day, I was an engineer, and by night, weekends, I was, doing all these musical activities. But because my attention was divided, I didn't consider myself an expert in either one of those. But when I'm on that call about writing a book, I thought, well, what about an inspirational book of how music impacted people's lives, gathering stories from other musicians of how music inspired their life, how music changed their lives. And that's kind of when the light bulb went off. I ran up, told my wife about it. She got excited about it. So this book we started into a series. It's called The 88 Ways Music Can Change Your Life. Is really what kind of began this whole march forward towards the music education advocacy. And, it's just kind of been rolling down the mountain since then, birthed the idea, well, what are we going to call this overall thing as we got started? And that's Keep Music Alive, came out of that. And then, Teach Music Week and Kids Music Day happened, a year and 2 years later from when we first had the book idea in 2014. And we're trying not to invent too many new things because we have a lot on our plate, trying to keep what we're doing, up and going and impactful as much as possible. But we're really having a great time doing what we're doing.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it sounds incredible. And, I assume there's some other benefits out there to learning music other than just like looking really cool when you're able to play an instrument.
Sure, sure. Yeah, I think when we were younger, some of us that was the reason that drew us to the instrument. I mean, the sound, yes, and having fun, but thinking that you might look cool when otherwise you might not. I don't know. I don't know if it worked or not, but that's what we thought when we were kids. But absolutely, I mean, starting with kids, our mission, and kind of how we spell it out, is to help more kids reap the educational, therapeutic, and social benefits of playing music. And you're spelling it out. I mean, the research they've shown that kids who grow up playing music, they do better in math and science and reading comprehension. Their attendance is higher throughout school. And along the way, they're learning so many what they call soft skills, patience, discipline, perseverance, that are important in so many other aspects of their life. And they're building up their self-confidence. And that self-confidence that they're increasing in their minds and their hearts carries over to every other area, of their life, throughout their schooling years and beyond. We like to say we're not trying to, turn every child into becoming a professional musician. Though some will be, sure, that's great. We need more Lady Gaga's, John Bon Jovi, or whatever country style, whatever it is that you like. All the more power. That's great. We need people making new music. But what we're trying to do is give every child the best chance of success, no matter what career path they choose later in life, because it's playing music through their developmental years that will help them do that. Because music is one of the few activities we do as humans that uses both the left logical and the right creative sides of our brain. And when kids are learning to play music through their developmental years, that pipe between the two sides is actually getting a little bigger. So that extra bandwidth, the extra space for neurons to fire back and forth, is how you get creative problem solving and thinking outside the box. And this is where we get some of our great doctors, scientists, inventors, entrepreneurs, and so on. So the music for children has so many benefits.
And that's interesting because we never really think about that. Like I said, I always wanted to learn an instrument because I thought it was cool. So I'm like, oh man, it's so fascinating to be able to play a piano that takes so much skill I couldn't imagine. And you never really apply that backwards to like the patience it takes to learn an instrument or the perseverance of it all. Like those
Right.
things kind of just get lost somewhere along the way.
Well, I will tell you, Colton, throughout my childhood growing up and through most of my adult life, I was like you. I had no idea all these other aspects. I just knew what, music meant to me growing up and how important it was to me. Uh, but as we started Keep Music Alive and started looking into a lot of the research, that's when I started to realize, all these different aspects and the importance and the benefits of playing music. And, from what I can see, they're still just really scratching the surface of the benefits of really audio, basically audio energy, oral energy in general, things that we bring into our headspace through our ears. It's just so powerful what it can do, the instrumental music for meditation, guided meditations with music and spoken word. It's like just like it's what we put in our mouth, what we feed our bodies is very important. What we put into our ears is so very important for our mental health and our overall happiness.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple things in there. Like, if I was having a very bad day, but I knew I could come home and just absolutely like crush playing a song, that would have to like help reverse some of that because I'm like, I know I can do it. I've done it 1,000 times. I'm confident in
Right?
that skill. I can at least reverse some of this, momentum that's going backwards on me.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that kind of gets to the reasons for adults to play music, the therapeutic benefits of playing music. Because Colton, when you're playing an instrument, you're focused on the here and now. You're focused on, what your fingers are doing. You're using both parts of your brain, and you're not really thinking about, what happened at work today. It's a coworker that kind of ticked you off. You're not worried about some financial issue you're having, maybe, or some impending thing coming up at work, or the guy who cut you off, on the turnpike when you were driving. It just kind of pushes all that out, and playing music allows you to be grounded in the moment. And anytime you can be grounded in the moment, it's good for the heart and good for the soul. And music is one of the, few activities that can really truly allow us to do that.
Well, and that makes me think about what we listen to, when we feel a certain way. There's days where I'm like, oh, I feel kind of low. Maybe I want to listen to low music. And there's some other times where I'm like, I feel kind of low. I want to listen to just the highest energy jam I can find because I want to reverse.
Yes, and that's a very important point that you bring up because you're right. Sometimes when we're feeling low, we need to actually kind of embrace it and kind of feel it fully, and before we can really release it. I advocate people creating like a couple different playlists. One of them is I call Pump It Up if you want to be inspired, get excited about something. And then another one is called, I think, Chill, if you just want to chill, relax, whatever styles of music allow you to do that. And then there's the Cry It Out playlist where, you're feeling down and you kind of want to just, for lack of a better word, wallow in it for a little bit. And this, a really great song in that mode and style that resonates with you personally for some reason will allow you to do that and literally cry it out. And, we all feel better after a good cry. We don't always realize that as adults, and with children, we kind of do it just instinctively, you know, but as we become adults, become more like self-conscious of, I shouldn't cry, I shouldn't cry. But, guess what? As adults, we sometimes need to cry and get it out. And it's very therapeutic to kind of just release those feelings, whether it's through a song, through talking to someone, whatever it is, getting it out. And, hit the nail on the head. Music can be very therapeutic in that aspect.
Yeah, and I think it's that kind of feeling. Like music is always there. It's always, it plays some role in our life. So when you hear something like keep music alive, it's a very dramatic statement that you're like, oh, is music in danger?
We do sometimes worry. I actually did a TED talk several years back called The Three Things That Are Killing the Future of Music. And kind of what it talked about was some of the cuts, educational cuts in music and arts programming in our schools, the lack of, reduction of live music in many venues, and then the technology causing kind of a whole shift in the payments to musicians and songwriters. Uh, and then now we have AI. When I did the TED Talk, AI wasn't, on my horizon. It was kind of on the back burner, but now we have artificial intelligence where, you can have machines writing songs. So, we do worry about, I don't know about music dying, but not having the same impact to people, and being taken for granted through these various, reasons that I mentioned. And music, I feel, is just so incredibly important that we need to never take it for granted because the benefits it provides to us, both playing music and listening to music, cannot be overstated.
Absolutely. And when you said, like we're losing funding in schools out there for people to learn music, that's kind of a very slippery slope because if you don't learn these abilities as a child, they're much, much harder as an adult. And not that we've never had anyone like create original music that they learned after becoming an adult, but I'm sure they would even say like it was much harder than it would have been if I had learned this as a child.
Children pick up, literally learning anything much better than we do as adults. And it definitely holds true for playing music. I mean, we can learn playing music as adults, learn to play the piano, guitar, ukulele, whatever it is you'd like to learn. I mean, we have some benefits as an adult. We can kind of will ourselves into, all right, I'm determined I'm going to do this. And perseverance may come a little easier as an adult because we've had to experience that through other parts of our life, getting to that point. But children's minds, it's just they soak up knowledge and soak up skills so much more quickly. It just amazes me when I see some young, sometimes you'll see something on the internet and you see a kid playing, the piano, guitar, saxophone, or whatever it is. I'm like, you just kind of shake your head. Part of me wants to quit. I'm done. And another part of me is so incredibly inspired. Like, I'm going to go practice extra hard to at least like get close to where that 15-year-old is or that 12-year-old is. I'm not going to reach there in my lifetime because I don't have enough time to practice to get there, but I need to inch my skill up a little bit further.
Yeah, there is definitely like I'll never reach this skill level that this teenager has versus like, well, if he can do it, I can do it. And both of those
Right?
thoughts like exist at the same time.
That's right. Absolutely right. And the thing to remember also is playing music is meant to be fun. Yeah, sure, there is some competitive aspect to it that people attribute to it. Well, that's a better guitar player than that one or whatever. But that's not what's the most important. What's most important is if when you're playing music, are you having fun? And it's never too late to start playing music, Colton. Actually, I once had a guitar student who didn't start playing guitar until he was 80 years young. 80 years young, and we worked together for 5 years in person, and then the pandemic came and we had to stop. But we had such a great time. He had such a great time learning songs from the 60s and 70s that he was familiar with. We learned them on guitar. He'd play and sing them together, and it was a whole lot of fun. His wife would comment how grateful she was that he was having this experience and what she felt it was doing for him. When they would go to Florida during the winter break for a few months, he would bring his guitar and play for his buddies down in Florida. So it's just never too late for us to pick up that instrument and start learning something. It might take us a little longer, but if it's something we really want to do, we can absolutely get there. And we don't need to become a virtuoso to have fun.
Yeah, and I would say there's no shame in saying like, I want to learn this. I've recently been looking around because I'm like, I really want to learn how to play piano, but I'm not going to buy a piano and fit it into my house somewhere. I'm like, I wonder if I could get a keyboard.
That's right. Keyboard, or even, it's funny, we talk about percussion and drums a lot because we have a tabletop electronic drum kit that we use at our instrument petting zoos, and it's extremely popular. And I tell parents, if they had this when I was a kid, I would have been a drummer. But when I was a kid growing up, my parents said, no way are you bringing drums, real drums into the house and making that kind of racket. But the electronic kits, you play with headphones. They have pedals you can hook up for the kick drum and for the hi-hat, so you can actually play it like a drum kit. It's just amazing, what you can do now with technology. So it's kind of, technology is that double-edged sword. There's so many benefits that come with it. And then there's so many things that kind of take away from our society, I believe, through technology. But, the availability of instruments that are there and the many different ways we can learn, online. When I was a kid learning to play guitar, we had records and you'd pick up the needle, put it back on the song, play it again, try to figure out the guitar part, pick up the needle again. 3 hours later, I think I have it down. Whereas now, I go on YouTube and like, show me the guitar solo for this particular song and show me what he's playing. And there it is. And I can watch. In 15, 20 minutes, I'm like there.
It certainly is like we don't want it to take over creating music for us, but at the same time, like you're saying, you could have an entire apartment complex full of people all playing instruments all at the same time, and someone walking by the building would be none the wiser because it's like it's
Right,
all
right,
all plugged into our headphones. You can't even hear it anymore.
right. Just great for learning. And then we want to unplug the headphones and play it, a little loud so everyone can hear.
Yeah. Yeah, of course you want other people to hear it at some point, but just like the fact that you could do that with a populated area and no one would know is fascinating. Like you don't have that nervousness, I guess, like I would have. Oh, I'm going to learn the piano via keyboard. I'm worried that like my playing is going to be so awful, someone's going to come tell me how bad it sounds.
Well, there are some instruments where it doesn't really lend itself to the listening with headphones. Yeah, there's a funny example of our daughter through high school. She wanted to learn to play the violin a little bit just for fun. So we got her a violin initially, like a very inexpensive student violin, and she started. First, she just wanted to learn by herself, teach herself through online tutorials, and then we eventually hooked her up with a teacher for a while. With Colton, she never wanted to play when we were home because she did not want us to hear her playing. We would sometimes come into the house, like, is that the violin I hear upstairs? So we kind of sneak in a little bit, like just listen for a little while before she'd realize that we were listening. And but it's just so funny because you're right. Sometimes we don't want people to hear. But for many instruments, any kind of electronic instrument, you can utilize headphones and not worry about your disturbing. You can play when the baby's asleep and somebody else is sleeping in the house. You're not going to disturb the neighbors. And it's really a true benefit.
Yeah, it's interesting. Do you think we'll get there with every instrument eventually, or is it just kind of prohibitive to some things? Like I had oh man, I don't even remember now, but I had like a horn player on the show at one point, and I'm like, that would be a very hard instrument, I would think, to make electronic.
Right, right. Well, but what you can do, I mean, you can apply a pickup, like a small little electronic pickup to instruments like that to transfer, some semblance of the signal into like an amplifier or speaker. But you're still going to have the natural sound coming out of the horn. But, like trumpets and trombones, you can get like a little mute thing that you put in to the bell. That it will mute the sound to some degree. So it's not going to be the really, really loud that you're going to hear two apartments down. But the person next door might hear something kind of soft, like, but it's not going to be anywhere near as, disturbing.
Interesting. So let's get to Kids Music Day, because that's kind of a very large event, like you were saying. Tell me more about it.
Sure, sure. So it's funny, we had started Teach Music Week, which is basically a week where we encourage musicians and music schools and stores everywhere to offer a free lesson to new students for kids or adults to get them started on their journey. And then shortly after we created that, we ran into a gal who was doing something called Kids Yoga Day. And, I'm thinking, Kids Yoga Day, that's really cool. And I wonder if there's a Kids Music Day. So, we go on the internet like we can nowadays, and sure enough, there wasn't anything there. So we created it. It's always the first Friday in October. And we partnered with the same music schools and stores in all 50 states, Canada, and a dozen other countries to offer a special event or promotion that benefits or celebrates kids playing music. It could be a student performance, either in-house at their location or out in the community. Could be an instrument petting zoo. Could be an instrument donation drive, kids open mic, uh, any free trial lessons, anything that will, again, benefit kids playing music. And then we promote that out to the media to get the media talking about it so that more families will know about the opportunities in their community and get them in to get their kids started on their musical journey. And we're actually celebrating coming up, from where we are now, talking the eighth annual Kids Music Day in October 2023. And the events that happen for Kids Music Day are over actually a 10-day period or so, meaning not every location has their event on Kids Music Day because obviously they have different schedules they have to, handle. But, between September 29th this year and October 8th is when all the different things will be happening. And on the website, kidsmusicday.org, you can put in your zip code or your city, state for the US and Canada, and it'll let you know what's happening in your area, the dates and the activities.
Yeah, and that's fantastic, to get kids out there and just get involved.
We're trying to get kids off the screens and more involved in in-person activities, whether it's sports, music, or even reading books, arts and crafts, doing things with your hands. It's so important to get, the younger generation off the screens because we're all walking around with these phones. And, it kind of scares me what, these kids that are growing up with that, what their lives are going to be like later.
Oh, and it seems like, I mean, it's definitely gained in popularity from a thought in your mind to say, like, oh, hey, we could start this to, participation in all 50 states. But it seems like it's gained quite a lot of popularity.
we've been very, very successful and very grateful for all the locations that participate, including some of the larger chains like Music and Arts, Guitar Center participate each year now. We also have a number of celebrity artists that lend their name and their image for us to promote Kids Music Day, ranging from Julie Andrews, Jack Black, Vanessa Williams, Richie Sambora from Bon Jovi, and a dozen others that say, yes, you can use our name and our picture to help promote Kids Music Day because we believe in what you're doing. And it really comes from just the power, speaks to the power of asking, Fulton, because, we had to do a whole lot of asking, like to get number one, all the stories we gathered for the book series, 88 Ways Music Can Change Your Life. I think we asked over 6,000 musicians, do you have a story? In order to get the entries that we got. And for the Celebrity Kids Music Day ambassadors, we had to do a lot of asking to get the first one to say yes, and then another one to say yes. And then after a while, it starts to snowball a little bit. And then the same thing with some of our industry supporters, ranging from Alfred Music to Casio to Con Selmer and Remo and about 10 others or so that support what we're doing through helping to share about Teach Music Week and Kids Music Day. What, we learn, and I think kind of your podcast speaks to a little bit, just dumb enough is, we have to ask questions. We have to ask for help. We can't just sit there in our, in our own mind, like, I kind of need this, or I really wonder about that. And I suffered from this for much of my adult life, is not asking enough questions, not asking for enough help. And it's a skill, an attribute that I wish I had learned much earlier in life, learned to ask for help, learn to ask questions, because that's really how we learn and how we kind of get from where we are to where we need to be.
Yeah, I mean, that's the beauty of it is, if you're willing to admit you don't know enough or you don't know as much as you could know or you need more help than you have, like just the ability to admit that and work forward from it really has a lot of power on the things you can do and the way you do things.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I used to attribute that to, being an introvert by nature. And sure, that's part of it. But then we learned from one of our mentors that, the thing to do is kind of transform yourself into being a situational extrovert. Meaning, if you know there's something that you need to do or something that's important to the cause you're supporting, just kind of force yourself out of your shell, break that shell open a little bit and come out, and then start asking, start inquiring, start reading, just get out of your inner shell. And, it's uncomfortable at first, but the more you do it, the easier it becomes. And, I'm nowhere near complete on my journey out of my shell, I'll tell you. But I think I've come, a good way that's really helped us get this far. But, we still have a ways to go.
I mean, if you are very introverted, like I generally consider myself fairly introverted, it is a stretch, but you can be an extrovert for 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Eventually it starts stretching out there. You're doing 30, you're doing an hour, whatever it takes. And it's just another skill, right?
That's right. That's right. And there's a saying I think that says the best chance for our success lies just outside our comfort zone. So we have to break out of our comfort zone.
Yeah, and I think that definitely applies back to music. You're not going to be comfortable picking up a guitar. You're going to be like, how do I hold this? Where's my hand go? What am I
Right.
doing? But you do it once and you're like, okay, I kind of get how this works. You do it twice and you're like, oh, hey, I think I can make a consistent note.
Right.
Eventually you're playing.
Absolutely right. And we have people that come up, kids and adults, and I don't know how to play guitar. It'd be like a 6-year-old or 8-year-old, 10, like, I know you don't know how to play guitar, and that's great. That's why you're here. Sit down and let's try it. Let's have a little fun. They'll be all like a little shy and like I'm not really sure. I'll show them how to hold it. I'll put the guitar pick in their hand, and I'll show them, just how you strum. Now for the guitar, we'll often have for the electric ones, we'll have a little bit of distortion on, so it so it has that kind of cool sound, that kind of like eyes light up. Like, oh, that's pretty neat. And then I'll show them, on my hand, I'll be making like different bar chords on the guitar and show them how it sounds different. Show them they do the strumming, and I'll change it how it sounds based on where my fingers are, so they can see, the interaction between, my left hand and what the sound is like. And then if we have enough time and if it's not too much noise going on around us, musical cacophonies, I like to say, I'll show them how to make a simple chord, with their left hand. So they're making the chord, whether the guitar, the ukulele, or the keyboard. And they just have so much fun.
Yeah, it made me think it would be far more surprising if a 6-year-old had walked up and be like, "Oh, I know how to play," and then just started, taking off with it, you'd be like, "All right, that is gonna rip my brain in half."
Well, I think a lot of times, they come with a little bit of lack of self-confidence, like, oh, I don't know how to play guitar, and that's okay. We tell them this is just for fun. We tell parents it's just for fun. We're not selling anything. We're not, there's no pressure here. This is an informal environment. Just try things out and see what you think. If you're interested in getting lessons, we don't teach ourselves now because we have way too many things going on, but we will connect you with a music teacher or music school and store, in your area that will accommodate whatever it is that you're looking for.
Yeah. Well, and I think this is one of those lessons, right, that we could take from like, I don't know how to do that into a very powerful experience because I could say that about basically every instrument, right? I don't know how to play guitar. I don't know how to play piano. And most people could say those things. But imagine the social situation where you're, just sitting around and there's an open piano and you're like, oh, I know how to play piano. Like the people around you are going to be way more shocked that you're like, whoa, you know an instrument versus like
That's right.
also announcing you don't know how to play.
Well, we have to go through transitions in our life and transformations, and the way to do it is to start learning somewhere. And we can learn, initially in our room, quiet, nobody's watching, nobody's listening. Then at some point we come out and we show the world a little bit. Well, here's what I learned. And then you know what? When you start doing that, you start interacting with other people that are learning, and realize that we're all at different levels, some higher, some lower, and we learn from each other.
Fantastic. Well, I've appreciated having you on here immensely. Any kind of last minute advice you tend to give people when they're just looking at music as a whole?
Yes, I think just never underestimate the power of music and the effect it can have on your life, both listening to music intentionally, selecting the music that you're listening to at any given time to match what it is you're trying to achieve. And then it's also never too late to pick up an instrument. Whether you're 30, 40, 50, or 80, whatever it is, we highly recommend you consider picking up an instrument and starting learning to play something and just having a little bit of musical fun.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again for being here. Why don't you tell everyone where they can find you if they're looking for more?
Well, thanks, Colton. The best place for people to find us is keepmusicalive.org. And from there, they can branch off to Teach Music Week, Kids Music Day, and pretty much everything that we're doing.
Fantastic. And all those things will be in the show notes. So if you're looking for them and you don't know how to spell something or you don't want to spell something, there's a link just down below where you're listening and you can just click that.
Thanks so much, Colton. This has been great. Really enjoyed our conversation.
Yes, thank you again for being here. I've always wanted to gain some real musical skill, so maybe I'll see some of you out at the next public event. Just promise not to judge me too hard when you see how little talent I have. We're over halfway through September, and the rankings have stabilized a little bit more. Number 1, the United States, led by New York, Oregon, and California. Number 2, still the United Kingdom, just barely led by Scotland. Number 3, Australia, with New South Wales still in the lead. Number 4, India. And number 5, Ontario, Canada, barely keeping their place in the top 5 as a whole. That's it for this week. I hope you have a great weekend, and I'll see you all back here for the next episode. Until the next episode, please do all those things to help the show. Rate, review, like, and subscribe. And don't forget to tell your friends. You can reach out to DumbEnoughPodcast@gmail.com or on any of the social media platforms if you want to reach me personally. But most importantly, stay dumb.